Hello, hello, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about disenfranchised grief because all grief is deserving of space. I'm Kelsey. I'm a registered clinical counselor and accredited clinical supervisor. I have two small kiddos myself. I've been working in the mental health field for 20 years and as a trauma clinician for 10. I care for children, adults, parents, and families, and founded Healing Spaces, a group counseling practice that is trauma informed, neuro affirming. And this work really is from my heart to yours. Before we dive in, I'd invite you all to join me in a land acknowledgement. Of course, you're welcome to honor the land that you're on instead of the land that I'm on. I live, work, and play on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I benefit greatly from the preservation of this land that has been cared for by these people since time immemorial. I'm committed to doing my part to heal historical and ongoing harms done to these peoples and to this land. When I say healing spaces and the work that I do is truly from my heart to yours, I really mean it. And I'm so glad to be here with you today. I believe in counseling and personal development, personally and professionally. And I truly care about your well-being, our community's well-being. And that's why I'm so committed to doing this work. Often when we think about grief, we think about the loss of a person, a loved one who is no longer living. Disenfranchised grief is different. One does not have to lose a person to experience grief. We can grieve the loss of health, dreams, relationships, safety, identity, or even the life that we imagined. And so today we're going to talk about what is common with the experience of grief, what is disenfranchised grief, what makes disenfranchised grief so difficult. We're going to talk about a tier model for grief and how we can apply that to disenfranchised grief, and then a couple takeaways for your tender heart today. Before we dive in, just to check in, what brings you here? What is heavy on your heart when you think about grief? And just take a moment to reflect. What is common with a grief experience? So common grief responses are often far broader and messier and more embodied than what we expect. It's not tidy, and grief isn't just sadness. It impacts all the parts of who we are. That means cognition. Our identity is a significant one that's impacted by grief. Who I am changes with a significant loss. Our relationships change, our nervous systems, our physical body, sometimes one's spirituality or experience of existentialism, and definitely one sense of time. A relationship with time can be impacted. Our emotional body, we might feel greater sadness, we might feel heaviness, we might feel anger, we might feel irritable. Our nervous system, our physiological body, maybe we're struggling with hypervigilance, maybe we're struggling with sleep difficulties. Our cognition, is our brain spinning? Is it hard to focus? Are we feeling foggy in our brain? Our relational self, that means relationships to other people. How are they strained or impacted by the grief or the loss that we're going through? How has our identity been impacted by the grief and loss that we're going through? And our existential and spiritual self, how do I understand what it is to be a person and live in this life? How has my spirituality been impacted by this grief and by this loss? I think one of the hardest things about grief is that the world keeps moving. Grief comes in waves, and the triggers can be so small and so upending, so significant. Something so tiny like a smell or a sight or a word or a song can open up the floodgates of our grief. And then we're okay again. And then it comes seemingly out of nowhere. All the while we're experiencing, if the world keeps moving, Your entire world is so different, and yet you look around and the coffee shops still stand, the relationships still stand. You scroll to social media and the people are still there, so many of them experiencing similar things, and yet your whole world has changed, and so have you. And others around don't always know how much has changed in your life from yesterday to today or last week until today. But you know that. And yet you have to still keep functioning, still go to the grocery store, still make dinner, still have a shower and put your clothes on. And yet it feels so different, even in the rhythm of same. So, what's different about disenfranchised grief? Like we talked about, when we think about grief, we often think about the loss of somebody. We're going to move to talking about disenfranchised grief. And what is something that comes to your mind when you're thinking about grief? Grief is a natural response to loss. And often we talk about death related losses, but there are so many other kinds of losses, relationship losses that might not be divorce or might not be the death of a loved one. There's so many other type of relationship losses that aren't recognized or appreciated by society and by our community. Future-based losses. That could be, I hoped and dreamed I would be able to do this thing, and now that is no longer accessible. I was hoping to move to England, but I no longer can. And I had already envisioned the life that I would be living there, and yet now I cannot do that. Childhood and development. Maybe you're grieving the childhood that you never got to have. Maybe developmentally you were impacted by childhood trauma. Existential losses. We think about bigger meaning in our life, spiritual meaning in our life, job losses. If our health and body have been impacted in a significant way, how is that changing our life? Identity. Maybe we thought we would be a certain person and move into a certain role at a certain age or have a certain type of life in a certain way, and we don't have that. And how does that change who I see myself as? Disenfranchised grief is the type of grief that isn't recognized by society. It's not often validated by our community or supported. And so the hard thing is that it's kind of invisible. We're carrying it all by ourselves. We don't have a place to put it. Disenfranchised grief might sound like, well, it wasn't that bad, was it? At least you have this wonderful shiny thing over here. Oh, God, you should be over that by now. Well, that's not grief. That's not a real loss. Maybe there's silence from community. People don't know how to respond. They're uncomfortable with the level of heaviness that you're experiencing or expressing. They don't know how to support you or interact with that level of heaviness, and they avoid it completely. And so you're left here with a significant heaviness, a significant weight in your heart, and yet you don't know what to do with it, where to put it. Maybe you doubt yourself that it's actually real or valid. Maybe you start to wonder if you've made it up or if it really isn't that big of a deal. And yet deep down, you know it is. And grief, it's not linear. So let's think about the loss of a pet. Loss of dogs is societally known as fairly significant, cats as well. Other people that lose different animals and pets, they don't get noticed as much. Let's think about if somebody loses their dog. Maybe you are losing your friend. Perhaps you're losing your community that's surrounded, being around your dog, the dog park, your friends that you go dog hiking with. You don't have a dog to go visit your dog friends anymore. Maybe time in nature. Maybe it's impacting your health. It impacts your regulation because you can't get out as much. You can't have snuggles and pets as much. Maybe you're feeling more lonely. So it's not linear. It's not, oh, you just lost your dog. You lost your whole lifestyle around your dog. You lost your whole identity around being a dog owner and being in the dog community. And so there's all these other parts of us that are impacted. Now let's think about other losses that are even a bit more ambiguous. The loss of what could have been. grieving living relationships. Maybe you've had a significant fray in a familial relationship or in a friendship, or perhaps it's something again that society doesn't recognize. It's a working relationship. Or maybe your favorite clerk at the store that you go to has moved on, or your favorite tattoo artist has moved on. Identity loss after a diagnosis. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about how when a diagnosis happens, often is an origin of trauma. It's such a significant event, receiving that information, trying to process who I am now with this diagnosis attached to me. Maybe there's loss of pregnancy that's spoken about or not spoken about. What makes disenfranchised grief so difficult? There's that lack of social acknowledgement. We don't have a ceremony to mark the moment of loss or the shift and change of having to not having. Sometimes it can be gray and blurry, and there isn't a specific date attached to it. It is ever evolving. There can be isolation. Our community and supports might attempt to move us forward in a positive way. I wanted to move my career and my job, so I left where I was working, which feels positive, but at the same time, there's all this grief of where I was before and who I knew and the rhythm and the people I was with. There's not really a language or space to express these types of loss. And it can be really complicated, it can be stigmatized, minimized, and there could be a constraint in expressing grief. And by that, I mean that we aren't able to express it openly. It isn't received well. And so we minimize and we constrain ourselves in how we talk about it, as opposed to truly allowing it to take up space. That means is it gets stuck inside. And that's never a good thing. Because when grief is shared, it's witnessed. The loss becomes real. The person mourning is visible. And that pain that's stuck inside isn't carried in isolation, it's shared, it's honored, it takes up space. And so it no longer has to be so big inside, it gets to be shared amongst community. And truly, when grief in terms of a loss of a person is experienced, coming together in community is so significant and important, such an important ritual, a part of grieving, when we share that experience together. And when it's disenfranchised, when it's not recognized by society, you don't have other people to share with. When grief isn't shared, there's a greater risk to physical and mental health difficulties. Like I said, when you aren't able to express it, it gets stuck and trapped inside, and that can impact stress on our system, which can impact our mental health, our nervous system well-being, our physical health well-being. There's a greater risk for isolation and secrecy, so pulling away from community, pretending we're okay when we're not. It can impact existing relationships, all this stress that's built up, or because of the secrecy, you maybe hide the difficult part that you're going through. And so people don't really know what you're going through, and they expect you to be okay because they truly don't understand. It can impact your capacity, the ability to show up to work in a meaningful way because of your brain fog, because of your heaviness. And then self-blame can really happen, and self-criticism. Oh, it really wasn't a big deal. I really should get over it. It's really not that important. I'm making it up. I'm making bigger than it needs to be. And we can't really show up in the way when we're stuck in this cycle of self-blame. We aren't moving into self-compassion. We aren't moving into honoring the grief that we've experienced. I really like the tier model of grief. On our website, we have a Living with Grief download that you're welcome to take a peek at. It's free to download, and I talk about the tier model there as well. The tier model was developed by a psychologist, J. William Worden, as a way of understanding grief. And I like this model because it talks about grief as a process as opposed to stages. Stages sound like it's kind of check the boxes, move through. But the tier model talks about the tasks or the process of grief. And it's not linear. We can go through the different tasks or processes and then circle back again, because again, grief isn't linear. We are not linear beings. For example, we might accept the reality of loss in one pocket of our world, and then we kind of move through that, and then, oh gosh, there's another loss that I didn't realize I'm also experiencing from this bigger grief, and I need to now kind of sit with that and process that. The 4 tasks: to accept the reality of the loss, experience the pain of the loss, and that can be so hard and so transformational. Adjust to the environment without what was lost, starting to integrate it into real life, and then reinvest in the new reality. And I would say the last 2 are really about understanding how we're different, how our world is different, our identity is different, given the loss that we've experienced, and integrating that into who we are. If we think about accepting the reality of loss, what does it mean to experience this type of loss? What is the end and the new beginning? What changes when this loss is accepted? And that can be a really hard one, because we liked what it was like back there. And now we have to accept that there are going to be some changes going forward. What do others not know? And what do you wish that they knew? Accepting the new reality of loss, a piece that can be really helpful is there any space for ceremony? There might not be a societal ceremony or a community ceremony to honor the type of loss that you've gone through, but are you able to create a mini ritual or ceremony just for yourself that will allow you to honor that? Experiencing the pain of this loss. Is there space to experience your pain? Where is the space to experience your pain? Is there somebody that you feel safe enough with to share this with? What are all the pieces of your pain holding? Is there a community you can connect with? Sometimes, thank you technology, we're able to connect with other people in different parts of the world that might also be connecting around a similar type of grief or loss. And so that can be a nice space to feel connected to others. I talked about how it's not linear. I like this tier model because it's not linear. So even as we're experiencing the pain of this loss, that's helping us to move towards acceptance. Experiencing the pain of this loss, where and how can you express your pain? Is there a place or a person that you could talk about it with? Is there a place that feels sacred that you can feel it? How do you like to process it? Are you somebody who likes to create and you can journal or draw or paint? Are you somebody that likes to move or be in nature? What's going to be your way of expressing this and helping your system move it through you to feel it and have it move through? Adjusting to the reality without what was lost. And this one's heavy because it starts to really ground into the reality of the loss. So who are you given what you have lost? What is different in your life with this loss? What changes have happened? And now that you've lost what you have, what do you need to do differently? What's different in your life? Are there specific gaps that now exist that didn't exist before? What changes have happened that you need to adapt to? And again, even though you're in an adjusting to the reality task in the tier model, we're also still processing the acceptance and pain. So they're overlapping. They aren't linear because we're not linear. Adjusting to the reality without what was lost. Can you carry anything with you from the time that you had pre-loss into this time? If we think about the time before the loss, when you had what you had, and now that time is over and it's ended, is there a thread that you can carry with you into now, into the new reality that you're going to be a part of? There is an end and a beginning, but is there a thread that you can bring with you? Is there a way that you can honor what was and carry that with you into the new reality without that thing that you have lost. And the last task or process is reinvesting into the new reality. And still in the background, right, we have accepting and adjusting and feeling all that pain is still going on in the different layers. But as you move into this new reality, what is different in your life? Where are the spaces? Where are the gaps that used to be filled? And how can they be filled in a new way? I don't want to toxic positivity this section because we know as there's new spaces, there can be a new energy to see how we can adjust and move into that and how we can fill these gaps in a different way. All the while, these spaces and gaps exist because of what we have lost. So both are true. How can you honor the loss as you move into the new reality? I'll give an example of this for you to help ground it a little bit. I had a few miscarriages in my journey to becoming a parent, and those are really significant in my world. And so I found a way to honor all three babies that we lost, wrote a poem, and I had something made. I reached out to an artist and had something made to honor each of the babies that we lost. And then every year, we've amalgamated all three losses into one day. And once a year, we throw flowers into the water to honor the loss of the babies that we lost along the way. And so that was a way that we were able to grieve and feel our pain. I wrote a poem, which really helped express and feel the pain that we experienced. Creating that poem was really profound for me. And then getting those three physical things made was really helpful to honor all three energies of these beautiful little bundles that we never got to meet. And then having ceremony once a year is a way to celebrate and honor and carry that thread of what we lost with us into our future as well. That's how I was able to move through that, feel my pain, and adjust to the new reality as well. So, what can we do if we're experiencing disenfranchised grief? For those of you grieving, honor your grief. You have a right to mourn your pain and heartache. See if you're able to connect with somebody who can help acknowledge your experience. Maybe that's a person, maybe it's a four-legged, maybe it's a book or an online community. Perhaps it's a forest or a garden. It doesn't have to be a person. Seeking community, creating personal ceremony to honor your grief. A creative expression of grief can be really helpful. And being selective in who you share it with. And this one, I wish I didn't have to caution, but I think it's important to caution because part of the reason disenfranchised grief is so difficult is because society and community doesn't acknowledge it as real or true or significant. And so we want to be thoughtful about who we're sharing our experience of grief with, because if we're sharing it with somebody who's rather dismissive, that could be really hurtful and harmful to us, especially in such a tender time. So being thoughtful about who we're sharing our grief with is important to think about. And of course, self-care during this time, making sure you're taking care of those foundation pieces, sleep, nutrition, grounding, and then mental health support, of course, if needed. If you are supporting somebody else going through disenfranchised grief, listen without minimizing or judging, without making it better. Believe them. When they say this is significant and has impacted them, believe them. What they're sharing is true and validate their experience. Be mindful of social influences that lean away from validation, things that have taught you to minimize or be a bit toxically positive, future focused without taking the time to really be present in that pain processing part. Support, encourage, potentially participate in rituals of honoring this grief. And then, of course, recognizing if you think that some professional support would be helpful, that's always something you can consider to suggest to your loved one. A couple tiny takeaways for today as we wind down here. Grief matters, and it's a process deserving of space. Even if society, even if community doesn't understand the loss that you've experienced, even if there aren't really words to capture The feelings that you're holding, it matters. Your grief matters. Your loss is significant and deserves to take up space. Society cannot tell you when it's okay and not okay to grieve, nor can they tell you what your grief should look like. It is such a personal process. Seek support that honors you. See if you can find community or one other person or four-legged or tree to connect with about this, to really hold space and honor what your heart is holding. I hope that was helpful for you if you're experiencing disenfranchised grief, because often it goes unnoticed and there's isolation and shame, and your grief is deserving of space. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. That's our social media handle. And we offer monthly free workshops that are trauma-informed and neuroaffirming, so you're welcome to check those out. They're all listed on our website there at healingspaces.center, and we have them coming up each month. All right, I look forward to hearing from you and maybe seeing you next month. Take care. Bye.